Is Indianapolis Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson set to miss another game this season? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of horseshoehuddle.com, and I'm joined, I like to say as always, by Jake Arthur, but it's been a minute since we've been together here, buddy.
Right?
But joined by Jake Arthur, of course, here. We have a fun show for you guys planned. We're going to talk about how the Colts defense is set up for hopefully their best game of the season this weekend, how the Colts offense might have a new signal caller under center, and will that signal caller, aka Joe Flacco, get his redemption from the last time we saw him out there if he is set to start. But first, we have quite a few injuries to talk about, Jake. I mean, I know I'm bearing the lead a little bit here, but there's one that we will get to. But go through the injury list for me, Jake. You were there at practice when Shane Steichen was talking through the injuries.
Yeah, so no one is ruled out yet, which we were all kind of waiting to see if, who they would rule out who hasn't been there all week. But they're not ruling anyone out yet. But with that said, we got 6 guys who are questionable. Offensively, you're looking at tight end Mo Alley-Cox, who, of course, is a starter. And then Quentin Nelson, I think he's going to be fine. I'm not really ever worried about Quentin missing time. Defensively, of course, you got more starters. It's always ideal when 2 of your top 3 linebackers are questionable, Jalen Carlies and EJ Speed. Juju Brents, they're still kind of working through the motions to see if he is going to be available to come off of IR yet. And then, Jalen Jones is off the injured list. Alec Pierce is off the injured list, so he's back. So you got some guys who are questionable, but the good news is you got a couple guys who are back. But the biggest one, obviously, is Anthony Richardson. He, of course, has not practiced this week. He's got back and foot injuries. Shane Steichen said today that it's more so the back that's giving him problems, saying that it's just really sore. It happened at some point during the game last Sunday against the Titans. And, it was something, maybe adrenaline carried Richardson through it, but he came out of the game basically feeling really sore with that back. So as they've always done, basically anytime he is injured, they've kind of put him in bubble wrap and been really cautious with it. But the interesting part of it, he had the oblique injury earlier in the season. I think it was week 6 and 7, maybe, that he missed. But he at least practiced those 2 weeks that he missed. He did not practice this week. So they're not ready to rule him out. They said, we'll see how the next 48 hours go. So however he responds to treatment, and if it starts to feel better this weekend, all the mental stuff, he's been able to take all the mental reps. He's been there at practice, just hasn't been physically taking those reps that Joe Flacco has. But if that is the case where Anthony cannot go, it will be Joe Flacco. One more go at it, throwing his hat in the ring one more time to see if he can get a little redemption from the brief period that he was the designated starter.
Yeah, and I have so many thoughts on how this week has transpired with Anthony Richardson's injury update. I mean, it feels like it came out of nowhere. On Christmas Day, we were told that if they practiced, he would have been out, and then he's missed the last 2 days as well of practice. And I just think this situation is the cherry on top to everything that we've gotten from Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen this season. You get your starting quarterback who has been dealing with injuries the last 2 seasons, missing practice all week with, not a super specific injury, which, of course, that's the Shane Steichen specialty here. We get the Shane Steichen saying it's soreness that he's dealing with, which is an awful way to put it. Like, even if he is just dealing with soreness, don't tell people that, because now if he misses this game, you're putting a target on his back and you are telling everybody this is a soft player. That's just what it is. The second you say that S word, you say sore, that just ruins any chance of this kid. And maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he wants Richardson to feel that pressure to play on Sunday. But I don't know. I hate that choice of word. Just say it's a muscle issue with his back. Every one of us who's like near the age of 30 or over the age of 30, Jake. I mean, come on. We know what it is when you say a muscle issue in the back.
I
We'll all
have
be like,
muscle
oh,
issues just living my life and not being
yeah.
hit by 200-pound people.
The second you say back, I'm like, okay, cool. You can
Yep.
take all the time you need, buddy. That hurts. That's out. But no, the second you say soreness, it kind of ruins all that. But let's just take all the information that we've been given at this point from Shane Steichen. That it has been soreness that Richardson's been dealing with. He's been held out all week. The next 48 hours will be paramount to see if he'll play. But if he doesn't play, man, with again back soreness, that's what we are being told right now. So I'm going off of that. It's a tough look, man. It really is a tough look because look at the guys that are going out there and playing on Sunday. Jalen Jones is going to play in this game with a throat injury. A throat injury. Alec Pierce is cleared concussion protocol. He's not super healthy going into the game. Quinn Nelson was screaming so loud I could hear it in my living room when he hurt his ankle last game. He's likely to play this game. I know he's questionable, but he's likely to play. You got
Hit.
Michael Pittman Jr. fighting through his back injury all season long. Like, these guys are fighting through injuries to play in this game for what appears to be a chance at the playoffs. I don't think they're going to have a chance at the playoffs, but we shall see. And if you guys follow me on Blue Sky, you know I kind of changed my tone on this a little bit because in my brain, the Colts are eliminated from the playoffs. But even if you have a 1% chance of making the playoffs, this is a must-win game in a playoff type game. And like soreness is not something that can keep you out of this game. So maybe this is Steichen just being vague and saying like, oh, it's soreness or whatever, when it's actually something more serious. And then I'll certainly take back a lot of what I'm saying here. But if it truly is something like soreness, and this is a playoff caliber game, and you're the starting quarterback of a team, you got to play. Like you simply have to play. And it's not looking like he's going to. So again, it just kind of adds to this dog pile of a season of Anthony Richardson's had in 2024, where like everything feels like a step back this season. And this is just part of it. Another injury, another, questions of the S word again, soft is going to come out. And then, with the playoffs on the line, and he might not be out there. So it's just a bad look for everyone involved, for the organization and for the player if he does miss this game. Hopefully it's not too serious and he's good to go and he gets taken off the injury report going into Sunday and we all overreacted. But as of right now, optically, this is just another mess for the Colts optically. And hopefully again, I'm overreacting, but I don't know if I am right now, Jake.
Well, I don't know if it's overreacting because you're just going based on the information you've been given from the team. Shane Steichen is the one that called it soreness. But I agree, regardless of whether they're in the hunt or not. I mean, Saturday they could be eliminated because the Chargers and Broncos could knock them out, whatever. But especially if you still have something to play for, you've got to be the guy that goes out there. Like, sure, you may not be able to perform at the level they need and want you to as a quarterback who can do things with his legs, but this is the time of year where all those guys feel like they're dying right now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like you mentioned that long list of guys who've been playing through everything, but this point of the year, everyone is sore. Everyone feels terrible, and it's something you got to play through. So I totally agree.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to make cross-sport comparisons here, but my favorite team in hockey, the Washington Capitals, Alexander Ovechkin's about to return from a broken fibula after like a month out. Like, and he's 40 years old. I mean, like, again, not trying to make comparisons across here, but like in sports, you have to play through some things. I'm not saying be crazy and play through like torn ligaments or something like that, and certainly take care of your body. But when the playoffs are on the line like this, and they kind of are, I guess, you got to get out there and play, man. Like, even if you can't run to your full potential, maybe the Colts are saying Richardson not 100% doesn't give us a better chance than Joe Flacco. And then that's even more concerning in another way. Maybe like that's another concern because they don't feel comfortable putting Richardson out there if he can't run. And Joe Flacco, they think is the better option. We saw what Flacco looked like last time he was out there. Flacco's not the better option, even on the roster, compared to like Sam Ehlinger, maybe. Like it's just not a winning formula. So it's just a bad look, regardless of what it is. Like, no matter what this actually is, because again, the Colts don't tell us much, which is fine. Like, they don't have to tell us much. It's completely what they want to do. But based off of what we've got, it's just a bad look. And I hope he plays, and so we can just kind of push this aside. But it's just another like addition to the growing concerns with this whole project.
And it could also be a thing where they just don't want to admit the fact that they feel like they could beat the Giants with whoever at quarterback. And they're never going to say that. If they are confident they could beat the Giants regardless, and they want Anthony as healthy as possible for a potential must-win game in Week 18 against the Jaguars, I think we all get that. It's just the information that's been shared so far is not great. Yeah. So here in a moment, we're going to talk about, the defensive side of the ball. There's injuries there as well. What it could look like against a Giants offense that is very charitable this time of year at Christmas. But yeah, we're going to talk about that and final verdict at how we think this game's going to shake out. All right, it's the holidays, and I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of good sporting events and going to events in general that you can kind of tie together with the holidays. Basketball is going on. I've got fond memories from attending Colts games when I was younger around this time of year as well. You got high school sports, even like Broadway stuff, like plays and stuff, like live events, Christmas time. They just kind of go hand in hand. And Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season, getting your people together and going to these live events. And that means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. And it's the perfect gift for Christmas. I'm sure a lot of you listening bought experiences and tickets for people for Christmas. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting incredible deals on great seats even easier, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And with the Game Time Picks, their curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and whatever you're into. They've also got the all-in pricing, which is super convenient. That feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, because to me, that's the worst part of looking at tickets. Tickets say $70, but then winds up being $120 a piece when you get through all the service fees. Game Time tells you up front what it's going to be. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
All right, so defense, Zach. This one I'm pretty comfortable with. The Giants do have some dudes on their offense, but, at the end of the day, the quarterback situation is what it is. I mean, Malik Neighbors, that's a guy that scares you, but even he's limited by what he's surrounded by. Tyrone Tracy, really good player. The Colts probably should have drafted him in hindsight. He's from the southwest side of Indy. He went to Purdue. He was at their local pro day. They need more than Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson in the backfield behind Jonathan Taylor. And Tyrone Tracy's had a really good rookie year for a terrible offense. But the Giants, their offensive line, they're going to be without starting center John Michael Schmitz. Malik Neighbors himself, we talked about, is questionable with a toe injury. Now, the Colts might have some of their own issues. We mentioned Jalen Carlies and EJ Speed are questionable. Of course, Speed was out last week with that knee injury, and Carlies was the starting will linebacker in his place. But Carlies with his shoulder injury, he's been, he was limited. He got limited Thursday and full on Friday. So he's certainly ramping up to perhaps be able to play. But obviously, if it's the Zaire Franklin and Grant Stewart show on Sunday, you can live with that. But I mean, you're losing a little athleticism there. But what do you think about this one? From the recon I've done about the Giants, there's just not a ton of threat there. There's a couple good players, a couple good skill position guys, but is there really anything there that makes you think, even this Colts defense, which has its lapses and being able to tackle and whatever their problems may be, is there anything this Giants offense does that has you saying they got to watch this?
No. All right, next segment.
Okay.
Let's go.
next segment. We're done. All right.
No, being honest though, this Giants team is just in a horrendous spot. I mean, it is just a terrible, terrible football team. There's a reason why they're sitting at number 1 right now in draft order. Like
2
they
and
are
13.
Yeah, 2 and 13. The Colts have more wins at MetLife Stadium this season than the Giants do. Shout out to Chappie for putting that one out there the other day. But yeah, this Giants team is a mess. I mean, they released their starting quarterback midway through the season. Since then, it has just been this Rolodex of trash at quarterback with Drew Lock having his struggles. I mean, Lock's probably their best option at this point, and that's not much. Last week had 2 pick sixes in that game against the Falcons. The Giants defense actually played kind of well in that game, but they couldn't get the win because Drew Lock was giving the ball to the other team. Their other options have been Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle. So who knows if we see one of those guys out there on Sunday?
Hey, they saw Tim Boyle with the Dolphins. If that,
yes,
that's the situation the Giants QB room is in. Is the Colts could face Tim Boyle for 2 different teams this year.
Right. So yeah, I mean, look, Malik Neighbors, I think, is going to be a fantastic player in the league. Tyrone Tracy was a good find by them. I want to say more positives, but I don't have. Wando Robinson, I think, is a fine slot receiver. Slayton can make some big plays, but at the end of the day, when your quarterback is, backup quality at best, like these aren't even backup quality guys to it. I mean, Drew Lock's probably the only guy capable of being a backup in the NFL talent wise on this roster. They're just in a bad place. So the Colts really got to dominate this game defensively. I will say one thing, here's one thing positive for the Giants, or if you're, putting money on the over in this game or something like that. The Colts defense this season has been the type of defense that will give you a shot to win against the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions and come out and play their best football against those teams. But they will also give teams like the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New England Patriots a chance to beat you as well. So we have seen this Colts defense play down to their competition quite a bit this season, but it would take a new level of playing down to their competition to blow this one, I think. It reminds me of a couple years ago. I remember I was talking with Patricia during the crossover with the Colts and Giants, and it was reverse situations a couple years ago in 2022, where the Colts were the train wreck of a team and the Giants were the fringe playoff team, like potentially going to make it. I think they ended up making the playoffs, but kind of a similar boat as the Colts. And she was like, yeah, the Colts have some things on this roster that kind of could scare me, and maybe they could surprise the Giants. And I said, look, Patricia, it's not going to happen. It's not going to, like, this game will be lucky if it's within like 30 points. And I think it was like a 35-point difference in that game. I think similarly to this game, like regardless of who starts a quarterback for the Colts, Joe Flacco, Anthony Richardson, Sam Ehlinger, the Colts just have way more talent. They're playing like a better team right now. And it really should not be close. Like, this is the one game this season where the Colts really need to blow out the opponent. I know they kind of had a blowout going last week before blowing it a little bit late, but this really is the game where, regardless of who's starting at quarterback, this needs to be like a comfortable win for the Colts for you to feel anything about this roster, because the two teams that are going out there on Sunday shouldn't even be comparable in talent. Like, even if Richardson doesn't play, like, it should be a healthy win for the Colts. I just don't see any way the Giants just don't have anything going for them right now. They're just a bad football team. And I think Giants fans would agree right now. Like, we don't have any Giants fans in our comment section right now yelling at me for that. So I think we're good right now.
No, and what you mentioned, that is like exactly how Patricia and my conversation went for the crossover. I asked her, I was like, is there anything the Colts should have circled in red? She's like, no, the only thing they do well is lose. And I was like, wow. All right. So
yeah. No, I mean, and when you're around it, like, again, in 2022, when we were around that, we knew there was no chance going into those games. Like, we knew the Colts weren't going to win any of those games, especially, Jeff Saturday at coach and whoever they were throwing out there at quarterback. But like, I almost want to say it's like just as bad or it might be worse for the Giants right now. I mean, they have fewer wins than what the Colts had in 2022.
And I think they're just kind of almost helpless at this point. They're very injured. They've had some significant, their IR presence is big. Like, some of their best players are just unable to be out there, and they don't have the depth behind that to make things interesting. And they're just kind of helpless. And 2 weeks left, the teams like this kind of just pack it in. They're early in the year, like I look at like the Patriots matchup, for example, Drake May is an interesting creative player, but you're like, this team, they're having some really bad moments on both sides of the ball. And the Colts kind of allowed Drake May and the Patriots offense to make things interesting. That doesn't exist in this matchup. Like the Giants are just bad and waiting to have their season ended. Like they're just getting through it. That's not to say there's not guys out there playing hard and playing for pride and everything, but there's just at a certain point you have hit your ceiling of what you can do. Your depth is compromised. Like there's just a talent discrepancy now.
Yeah. And maybe we'll eat our words on Sunday. Maybe the Giants come out here and punch the Colts in the mouth. I mean, certainly I would
It
not
would be
shocked.
hilarious, I think.
Like, I wouldn't be shocked because this Colts team, again, has played down to competition this season in a lot of ways. So it wouldn't shock me, but it would shock me. It would shock me. I'm not trying to talk smack on the Giants here, but like they're just a bad football team, like a really bad football team. And the Colts should not play with their food here. It should be a comfortable win for the Colts on Sunday.
Well, so I shared this in the media room earlier. There is some precedence here for Colts letdowns on weekends of my daughter's birthdays. The first birthday party we ever had for her was the 33-point Vikings swing. Her birthday party's this weekend, guys. The Giants, this could get ugly. There's precedence for it. Keep an eye out. If something bad happens, we know that her birthday is a curse on the Colts. So I'm just throwing it out there. It could happen.
One thing I'll say before we have to get to our final segment is if they do lose this weekend with your daughter's birthday being the curse, schedule her birthday for the week of at Jacksonville next year. Like, I don't care if it has to be way too early or way too late, like on the same week.
No one wants to celebrate your birthday at the end of December anyway. September, the weather's better. Like, I'm here for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, coming up, guys, we are going to give our final thoughts on this game, and we kind of went through them there, but we'll wrap them up in a nice, neat little bow here coming up in just a second. All right, Locked On Colts Everydayers, we are back talking everything Colts and Giants, the game that you guys desperately want to see this weekend. I mean, everyone's going to be tuning in. It might be Joe Flacco versus Drew Lock, which we all know is a very, very exciting thing for everyone. But Jake, I know we kind of just joked about it in the last segment, but what are your thoughts on this game? And do you think, outside of the Colts playing down to their competition, do we think that there is any way that the Giants upset the Colts in this one?
I really don't think so. Like, I think it would have to take a complete and utter just no-show from the Colts, like the type of stuff we saw from them in 2022. That type of showing has been few and further between under Shane Steichen. It's happened a time or two, but not against this level of opponent. So even if the Colts had a terrible game, you could see them win a 6-3 matchup like Seahawks Bears or something. But no, even if it's ugly like the Panthers game last year where all the points came from Kenny Moore pick sixes, I just don't see it happening. The Colts aren't a really good team by any means whatsoever, but they have much more talent. And at the end of the day, talent wins out. When it's two rough teams,
Yeah. My overall thoughts are because I was thinking maybe if Flacco starts and you have that disaster type performance that he gave against the Bills, but that was a game against one of the best teams in football in the Bills, and they lost by 10 in that game when Flacco had some of the most horrendous interceptions thrown because the Colts defense made some plays, because Flacco was still able to move the ball a little bit. So I just don't see a way where the Colts are completely unable to move the ball, even if Flacco has a couple of turnovers and he's the starter, and presuming he's the starter, even if he does have some turnovers, he'll still be able to move the ball a little bit. And the Colts defense, I think, will be able to get some turnovers this weekend as well. So yeah, if Richardson starts, Richardson has too much of a high floor for what he does on offense. We've seen outside of the Lions game where every receiver forgot how to catch the ball, Richardson's games typically produce points regardless of how pretty it looks, because of his rushing threat, because of the impact he has, because he doesn't take sacks and stuff like that. And then Flacco, his high floor is just the fact that even if he commits turnovers, he's still going to sling it. He doesn't just go into a shell. So he will create some plays down the field. So I just don't see really a way the Giants can surprise the Colts. Again, maybe the Colts defense plays down to the competition like they have at times this season, but even then, it would be. Drew Lock would have to have that one game a year that he has where he just goes nuclear. Which he did it last year, I think, against the Seattle Seahawks. I want to say when the Giants played the Seahawks, but we haven't seen that Drew Lock this season. So I don't know. I just it's going to be a boring game. Don't get me wrong, because who wants to watch Joe Flacco and Drew Lock for 60 minutes on Sunday? But I do think, or 48 minutes on Sunday, getting my sports mixed up there. But I just, it's just going to be one of those games, one of those late season games between two teams that probably are not going to, one team probably not going to be in the playoffs and one team certainly not going to be in the playoffs. It's just going to be one of those kind of games on Sunday.
Well, the great equalizer with all this is weather. And so the Colts practiced outside today, and it was cold and rainy and just gross. And they did that because that's what the weather's supposed to be like at MetLife on Sunday. And usually when the weather is a factor, the better team, more talented team wins. I feel like it's rare for there to be a big upset when the weather sucks. Yeah. And the Colts are on the heels of rushing for a franchise record 335 yards last week, which leads me to believe they should run the ball capably well, regardless of it's Anthony or Flacco with Jonathan Taylor on Sunday. Maybe the fastest NFL game of the season this year because of the weather, because of the volume of running, maybe. Now, obviously, we know Jonathan Taylor has not been as effective when Joe Flacco is at quarterback, and they're not going to run for 300 yards again. But we know what this offensive line is capable of just a week ago. Yeah. So all things considered, and the weather perhaps making it equal, the better team should win out.
Yeah, I do want to see a good running game again. I want to see some Tyler Goodson snaps in there too to run the ball a little bit, especially if Flacco's out there, just to see some more explosiveness in there. And also, I don't want to see Jonathan Taylor hit 30 carries in a kind of meaningless game, like a somewhat meaningless game late in the season, or what potentially could be a meaningless game, I guess, depending on what happens on Saturday. So yeah, get some Goodson carries and I guess some Trey Sermon carries too. But this is a Giants defense that's missing Dexter Lawrence, that's missing Bobby Okereke, that's missing a lot of the middle of their defense. They allowed a big game to Bijan Robinson last week as well with the Atlanta Falcons. Just run the ball, get out of this game with the win, and let's get one step closer to ending this season in Indianapolis. I think that's my thoughts right there on this game. I know you guys kind of feel similar when it comes to just this Colts season in general, just waiting for it to end so we can get into some draft content, some free agent content, some, firing content. You guys are excited about that stuff. But Colts and Giants. Do we have score predictions, Jake? You want to go through score predictions for this? What did I give you in your prediction article? I gave you a pretty big, I think it was 27-13 or something.
Let's see. Yeah.
27-10.
While I'm looking for yours, I'm going to say 23-6.
Yeah.
I got to see a shutout from the Colts, Steve, before I believe it. You said 27-13. Yeah. So I'd say 23-6. I think the Colts offense, some facet of it will be effective, whether it's running the ball or what have you. Flacco likes Josh Downs. I think Downs had 7 receptions in each of Flacco's starts. Yeah. So between the run game, between Josh Downs' high volume, I think they'll be able to move the sticks at least a little bit. I like 23 points. Part of that is probably going to come from a pick six, or the defense will get a turnover deep in Giants territory or something. But yeah, I think the offense and defense will play relatively complementary to bring them a decent win. If the weather wasn't going to suck, I would maybe give them more points, but 23 is probably a decent number for a somewhat overwhelming performance.
Yeah. Let's just hope Anthony Richardson plays. Give me a clean game on offense, a dominant game on defense, and let's get out of this game with a win. That's all we have for today on Giants Colts game preview. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day. Next, go find Locked On NFL First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that insider scoop, follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks2, all on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram, so give us a follow over there. And also subscribe to us on YouTube where we listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here Sunday after the game.